If you know me, you'll know that Digimon Adventure 02 is my favourite Digimon season of all time, and also contributes to a large swathe of sequel seasons and sequel games that I seem to fall in love with, more so than the original. And part of the reason I love Digimon 02 so goddamn much is the Armor Digivolutions, an incredibly cool concept which elevates the idea of Digivolution whilst also working around a new threat, a new barrier to the new lineup of Digidestined. In Digimon 02, almost every partner Digimon got at least one Armor Digivolution, Wormmon and Digimon World Tour partners aside, and obviously the OG Adventure kids, although we'll get to that one day. The new cast each got 2 Armor Digi-Eggs each because they each represented 2 crests rather than just one. Vmon getting Flamedramon and Raydramon, Hawkmon getting Halcymon and Shurimon, Armadillomon getting Digmon and Submarimon, and then Patamon getting Pegasusmon, and Gatomon getting Nefertimon. Interesting that Gatomon's probably the only champion Digimon that Digi-Armors, at least in the show. And there are of course some movie exclusive Armor Digivolutions like Madramon and Golden Rapidmon, but today I specifically want to talk about the Armor Digivolutions we didn't see in the show. You see, as a kid I had the D-Terminal, which a lot of kids would call the Digimon Pokedex, but also in the show obviously helped facilitate Armor Digivolution, and it was there that I discovered that theoretically every 02 partner Digimon can use any Armor Digi-Egg to Armor Digivolve. Now, some of these Armor Digivolutions are not very good, and I will go over those in another video, but today I want to talk about some of my absolute favourite ones we never saw in the show, but absolutely should have.
Alright, ready to go? I'm ready. Ready? Let's go.
Now, I do have some qualifying factors for what I consider a good Armor Digivolution. You see, in the show, Armor Digivolutions become a sort of replacement champion form, at least until they finally can attain their champion forms and then DNA Digivolve. But something I always found really interesting about Armor Digivolution is you can still see elements of the rookie under the armor. For instance, in Flamedramon and Raydramon, while obviously much bigger than Vmon, you can still see the Vmon body underneath, or maybe I guess the ex-Vmon body. This isn't a hard and fast rule. You can see a lot of elements of Armadillomon in Digmon and Submarimon, and you can see tons in Halcymon, but not so much in Shurimon, but at least you could believably think the Hawkmon was under there. So when I look at these Armor Digivolutions we never saw in the show, I'm looking for ones that could feasibly be in the show, not boxing glove fish. This list is going to be in alphabetical order because I went through the Digimon wiki, because I mean, that's what all Digimon tubers do apparently. And so without further ado, all that waffle, let's get into it. My first favourite Armor Digivolution is Butterflymon. The combination of the Digi-Egg of Knowledge with Gatomon works really well here. There's not a ton of Gatomon, but you can still see Gatomon design influences poking through, and I like the interpretation of the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, drawing both from Tentamon's insectoid-like qualities, kind of the progenitor of the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, or the Crest of Knowledge, and then also folding in some of that Digmon Armored Yellow. Super good, amazing, and keeps up Gatomon's Digivolution theme of flying. Next up we have our first Vmon entry, and Vmon does dominate this list because, you know, he's the Agumon of 02, and this is Depthmon. Again, you can super see that this is a Digivolution of Vmon, but it goes in a much different direction. The lack of legs makes it very distinctive, especially from Raydramon, who is all legs, and Flamedramon, who's pretty leg heavy. Leg heavy, what does that mean? And once again, you see the incorporation of the Digi-Egg of Reliability. The big obvious design influence is Submarimon, Depthmon being a Vmon that can go down into the depths, but again, that also comes from Ikakumon, from Gomamon, the whole sea aqua animal tying in to the Digi-Egg of Reliability. Next up we have the Digimon that is very much a parallel or working in lockstep to Butterflymon, and that is Flybmon. Instead of Gatomon with the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, we now have Hawkmon with the Digi-Egg of Knowledge. I especially like this one because I think they put extra effort into keeping Hawkmon's identity, but transmuting that once again to the insectoid nature of the Digi-Egg or Crest of Knowledge. You can see Hawkmon's feather has now become 2 feathers, kind of like sort of insectoid antenna. The wings obviously have become insectoid wings, but you've still got the nice red, which is the through line of Hawkmon's color, apart from Shurimon, obviously. And again, in some weird scenario where everyone could use the same Digi-Egg at the same time, it would look really cool to have Butterflymon and Flybmon working next to each other. It's another V-Mon. This is Gargoyle Man. Now this one doesn't strictly fall into my criteria because I do like the armor in Armor Digivolution to be very present, but I think Gargoyle Man is a really cool example of this, using the crests to modify a design of a Digimon that normally wouldn't have interacted with it. So Gargoyle Man is a product of the Digi-Egg of Light fusing with V-Mon, and because obviously Light is Hikari or Kari's crest, the angelic elements come through, which probably would have happened if it was the Digi-Egg of Hope as well. There's a few design choices here that I super love. Obviously you can see V-Mon still if V-Mon had become this sort of holy gargoyle angel. But also a particular element of detail that I really appreciate is that all of the binding armor on Gargoylemon is rings, just like Tailmon or Gatomon's tail ring. It's a design choice to have these kind of ring armors that you see in a bunch of Digimon that are completely unrelated to Gatomon, but I can definitely feel that they looked at Gatomon and Angelwomon when they went through the design process of Gargoylemon. From one V-Mon into another, and actually one that I debated not putting on the list, and that is Kangaroomon. In the head you can 100% see the V-Mon influence, but the armor is a little bit lacking, and even further from that, the Digi-Egg of Kindness elements I don't really see. Obviously we never saw a true Digi-Egg of Kindness Digivolution for Wormmon, and the one that is canonical according to Digimon is really not very good. But you can see elements of Poochymon in this design, even though once again Poochymon is a really terrible Armor Digivolution for Wormmon. No one at any point in Digimon history thought about redesigning that or trying a new one? Okay, but what it lacks for in armor and a kind of design through line, I think it makes up for in the fact that I could totally see this in the show. If there was a Digi-Egg of boxing, I could totally see this being a thing that V-Mon would digivolve into. I think the V-Mon ears are very much on play here, and you can definitely see it kind of shining through. Plus it's just a nice Digimon design that I wish we'd seen. Another slightly weird one is Oposuman. This is Gatomon with the Digi-Egg of Kindness, and this, I nearly didn't put this on the list. However, I think it would have looked super good on like a poster for Digimon Adventure 02 or some kind of promotional material. Maybe like a sort of summer movie where they had like a Digi-Egg exchange, like just a fun hyper battle like Kamen Rider has-esque movie. I think Oposuman would have been a really good thing to put on the cover of one of those. In my mind, I see the balloons as the armor, and obviously you can see the through line of Gatomon in Oposuman, even obviously that is based on an opossum, not a cat. But if I think of a Gatomon that is just filled with even more kindness than she's normally filled with, a cool kind of children's entertainer animal is kind of where I see that going. So while obviously the armor elements would have been better as a sort of mascot Calamon-esque Digimon, I would have actually loved to have seen this in the anime. It's Wormmon again, and here we have Quetzalmon. This is Wormmon with the Digi-Egg of Light, so again Kari, and I think this is one of the strongest Armor Digivolutions that Wormmon has. Obviously the worm element has become a worm with a Y or a Quetzalcoatl. Sure, I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
Quetzalcoatl.
The Digi-Egg of Light has given it semi-angelic wings, but also it is fully armored. The green tufts of hair poking through, while obviously Wormmon doesn't have hair, evoke the imagery of the green Wormmon. I don't know if I would have liked this as an official in-show Wormmon, but in a situation where they're all trading Digi-Eggs, I definitely would have believed and thought this was a Wormmon Digivolution. Next up, one of my absolute favourites, and a rare showing from Patamon on this list, because Patamon does not have some good ones either, is Rhinomon, which is Patamon with the Digi-Egg of Miracles. What I like here is that it really invokes Patamon's other Armor Digivolution, that being Pegasusmon. Patamon obviously is not a horse, he's some sort of weird little guinea pig thing, but for the Digi-Egg of Light, he became like a Pegasus, which is a very storied mythological creature, which totally makes sense. I like that for a Digimon of raw power, of something, you know, golden Digimental, you know, something like Rhinomon would be born, because he still goes onto all fours, which is a unique trait of Patamon's Armor Digivolution. When he regularly digivolves, he becomes humanoid, he stands up straight and becomes this big angel. So I like the idea of this more mammalian evolution. And I think, again, if I saw this on some kind of movie DVD box and that was like Patamon's Digi-Egg of Miracles Digivolution, I'd totally believe it. It looks great. Next up, possibly my favorite, although there's one at the end that I really love as well. This is Rinkmann, which is Hawkmon with the Digi-Egg of Friendship, and wow, what a fantastic Armor Digivolution idea. You can totally see the incorporation of elements of Shadramon, the blue and the lightning, but instead with a Hawkmon through line. The bird-like headpiece and feathers going back, the cape kind of evoking Hawkmon and Halcymon and Aquilamon's wings. Some of it even evokes Shurimon. This to me is one of the most perfect Armor Digivolutions we never saw in the show. The ice skating motif sets it apart from Shadramon, but also keeps up that visual element of speed. You could totally see a winter-themed episode where Rinkmann comes sailing down, 1,000 miles per hour to save everybody. Next up, it's Searchmon, which is Wormmon with the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, and this, much like Rinkmann, is one of the most solid we're going to see this whole list. You can see Wormmon in this Digivolution. It's become more beetle-like again, which seems to be a through line for a lot of Digivolutions, but specifically Wormmon. But you can see Wormmon's antennae, you can see elements of his face, although they become much more focused and strong looking. And of course, huge incorporation of both the armor theme and the Crest of Knowledge. Another one that if it showed up in the show, wouldn't even think twice about it. I'd go, yes, of course that is Wormmon's Digivolution with the Digi-Egg of Knowledge. Low-key, make it like a rose gold, take the Crest of Knowledge off, put the Crest of Kindness on there. I'll take that as my Wormmon Armor Digivolution. Our penultimate Digimon on this list is Swanmon, and this is Gatomon with the Digi-Egg of Love. Again, this is building up on a lot of the points we've already seen in this video. But what I do like is the compromise between Gatomon and the Digi-Egg of Love. The Digi-Egg of Love obviously representative of Biomon and Birdramon, etc. And in Digimon 02, Hawkmon, Halcymon, Aquilamon, etc. The combination of the cat-like Gatomon with the elements of birds and obviously Gatomon's further evolutions of holiness combine really nicely here into a swan. Also, just a little interesting thing for you Tokusatsu fans that I find kind of funny is that in Power Rangers SPD, there is the Cat Ranger, who in Japan is the Swan Ranger, and I just thought that was kind of a neat thing that there's that little intersect, which is obviously not intentional or even super close, but I just like the fact that there is this kind of elegant crossover between cats and swans, in design aspect at least. And finally, ending off on a Wormmon Digivolution, I thought Vmon dominated this list, but looks like it's Wormmon. Almost like I have a bias. This is Shadramon. Shadramon is right up there with Rinkmann for me. I go back and forth almost daily on which I think is better, because this is Wormmon with the Digi-Egg of Courage. I think this one works so much more for me, and I wish also we saw a really good Vmon with the Crest of Kindness. I think Shadramon works way better than Kangaroomon, and it's a big shame that Kangaroomon didn't incorporate more elements of kindness, because you can see multiple through lines here. You can see the insectoid nature of Wormmon, this time going into a more kind of butterfly design, which again works for an insectoid Digimon. Obviously, you can see the Digi-Egg / Crest of Courage running through here. It hugely looks like an insectoid version of Flamedramon, and obviously has some of the flame and dragon elements that you see from the Agumon Digivolution line. But I think more than almost any of these other Armor Digivolutions, this one has a huge thematic impact also. Obviously the friendship between Davis and Ken is a huge part of 02 and eventually culminates in, spoilers, their champion Digimon DNA digivolving into Pyldramon, which becomes Imperialdramon and Imperialdramon Fighter Mode and all that stuff, the kind of de facto main Digimon of Adventure 02. And so I think, again, in some kind of side material or a movie, to see Ken pick up the Digi-Egg of someone he used to despise, who is now his best friend, and access the Digi-Egg of Courage, which again is not his crest, so that would require a huge act of courage to be able to activate it. And for that to all be reflected in the resulting Digivolution, I think that would be huge. Again, it's a huge shame that we don't have a really decent Digi-Egg of Kindness evolution for Wormmon. I'm looking at you, Puchimon, which meant that Kangaroomon doesn't have a lot of this thematic relevancy, but that's why I love Shadramon. If this showed up in the show or in a movie or in a Gaiden or whatever the fuck, you would feel the relevance to the story and the characters in its design. And I think ultimately that's what makes a good Digimon for the anime. Outside of the anime, it's about how damn cool it looks. Anyway, that's my list of my favorite Armor Digivolutions we never saw in the show. If there's any that you love down below, let me know, or just elaborate more on the ones that I talked about in this video. And I will be back at a later date to talk about some of the worst Armor Digivolutions we never saw in the show and how maybe we could fix them. But until then, thank you for watching, I do appreciate it. You can like and comment and all that dumb bullshit. But until next time, stay awesome, and check out my podcast, Goggleheads, where we do a weekly recap of Digimon Adventure 2020. Bye! Ow.